Welcome along to the Voice of Boxing in association with the terrific streaming platform that is Loungers TV. We've had a whole host of different faces from the boxing world in and around. We've got someone who really knows the sport. Not only a fantastic fighter, but a brilliant commentator too. There's nothing he hasn't done in boxing. Matt Macklin, my old sparring partner, comrade, co-commentator, friend from the Sky days, still flying high with Sky Sports. Great to see you. Thanks for coming in and dropping by us here in the studio in Mill Hill. It's good to see you.
Hi, good to see you too. Glad to be here. Glad to chat boxing.
Yeah, fantastic. We love doing that. Okay, I've got a question for you that I don't even know. When was the first time you laced on the gloves and why?
So I was 10 years old, down at Small Heath Boxing Club in Birmingham. What was the second question? Why?
Why?
I just loved it. I played, all the sports, football.
You were all the sports, weren't you?
Yeah, football, rugby, Gaelic football, hurling. I did a bit of taekwondo, karate before that.
And you were good at hurling?
Very good at hurling, yeah. I played it all in the summers in Ireland. Played underage for Tipperary. Played Ballingarry was my club. Played from under 12 up to under 21 with them. Although I was only 15 when I was playing under 21.
So naturally, always a sportsman.
Yeah, always. Yeah.
But why boxing? I mean, there's so many other ways you could have gone.
Yeah, why boxing? I don't know. I remember the Mike Tyson, Larry Holmes fight and the Tyson Bruno fights. My dad was like most men that love sports, their boxing won't necessarily be their number one sport, but it's probably their third or fourth sport. They'll watch the big fights, and he'd always watch the big fights, and Ben Eubank and these things, but it's how he talked about boxers. They were almost like on a higher level to other sports people, and I think other sports people do see that.
Sort of demigods almost.
Yeah, because it's
the ultimate
it's
man
the
or
ultimate,
manner,
isn't
yeah.
it? Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and I always got that. And then, of course, in and around that time as well, I watched the Rocky movies. Who doesn't love a Rocky movie? So, yeah, all kind of...
Did you have heroes, boxing heroes?
I love Tyson. Like I said, that was that era, and I loved Tyson. I liked Eubank, more so than Ben at the time. But see, now I like Ben.
I always like that.
Yeah,
I liked Eubank more for the drama and the showmanship, and I think I like Ben better now. It's funny, isn't it?
Yeah. Obviously, Steve Collins.
Yeah,
sort of came at the back end of that, and then Nassim Hamed. You know what I mean? Like these were people that were flying high around that time when I was kind of, between 10, 11, 12, that sort of it. But then...
Did you naturally have a sparkle for the sport? Was there something that, the trainers in the club said, look, this guy could be good?
Yeah, so we had my dad's friend, his son, boxed for Small Heath. I think he's more than 10 years older than me, probably 12 years older than me. But I remember he was the only person we knew that boxed. And I remember my dad told me, he played a bit of Gaelic football as well for the same club that we would have been.
Because your parents are Irish.
Yes.
That's how you had the links in the summer.
That's right. So the Gaelic football club, hurling club we were affiliated to in Birmingham, my dad's good friend there, his son, boxed for Small Heath. So when I wanted to box, he took me down there, and I remember watching. He's now Darren Sweeney actually, and I remember watching him box in the ABAs. I think he won. He definitely won the Midlands area. I think he got to the semi-finals. I think Dean Francis maybe beat him in the semi-finals. So, and then that was that really. I went down there. Mark and Paul Ramsey, Paul Denton. He boxed as a professional.
Yep, remember them?
Yeah, but they were like both ABA champions. Mark boxed Costa Sioux in the World Championships.
They were good fighters.
They were good fighters. They could have been, but this is why management's so important. If you're not guided by the right people, you can easily get beaten early doors in your career.
Become a journeyman.
Get bumped off, and you become a gatekeeper. Then before you know it, you're a journeyman. That's what they ended up as, and
they
were as good as anyone.
Really?
when they were
See, that's
amateurs.
interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
That boxing can... People don't really understand outside of boxing what the journeymans do. They turn up, they give the prospects a real sort of lesson, and then they lose and they move on. And people don't quite get that. Whereas careers can easily go like that, can't they?
Easily. I remember Robert McCracken saying to me, I was around Robert a lot, sort of 17, 18. The year, within a couple of weeks of me winning the ABAs, he fought Howard Eastman in his final fight, and I did a bit of sparring with him, just moved around and that. But
Sky Fight, yeah, I remember it.
I remember him telling me in and around that time when I was like, he was already one leg in retirement. He was training fighters, that type of thing. But and I remember him saying to me about Paul. He said when me and Paul Ramsey were boxing for England, I thought Paul Ramsey was going to be a professional world champion.
Really?
Yeah.
Isn't that funny? You succeeded, obviously, as an amateur, ABA champion. Was it always the dream to go pro? Because I know you sort of did a law degree, or you started it. You got very good A levels, and you were a bright young man. Was there the boxing was a dream, or was it just it suddenly became a reality?
I think.
And how pleased were your mum and dad?
I think at school, you're doing every sport. I was playing football. I was playing rugby for the school. I was boxing. In the summer, I was playing Gaelic football, hurling, a bit of everything. Played cricket for school. I was on the cricket team. Literally did everything. And then kind of probably 16, 17, I won the NABCs. I won the junior ABAs. And then I went to down at Crystal Palace. I was 17. I got invited down. Carl Frotch was on the team. David Hay, they're obviously older than me. Boxed for Young England against Germany, Italy, and then I got picked to go to this tournament in Sardinia, which is like it wasn't the European Champions, but it was a good tournament. Like all the teams send their strong teams, and I beat a good German there, Eddie Gutnecht, who tragically fought. George Groves. He was a good amateur. I beat him, got robbed in the final against an Italian there, and then, went to another tournament, beat the Italian, won a gold. Anyway, went to the World Junior Championships, and it was around that time then where I think it just kicked onto a different level for me in terms of, not that I didn't take it seriously, I always trained as hard as I could, but it was like I stopped doing other sports then. I remember I tore the ligaments in my ankle playing Gaelic football in Dundalk in Ireland at a tournament. I was playing for Warwickshire, and it was like all the exile counties like London, Warwickshire, New York, and Kilkenny, because they were the weakies. They're like an out and out hurling. They're an out and out hurling county. So it was like we won that, but I tore the ligaments in my ankle, and then I missed out. I think I missed out on a couple of fights at the start of the season. I remember just thinking, maybe I need to knock all these other sports on the head, or I'm either going to be a jack of all trades and a master of none, or I've got to focus on one.
But what about the academia and the law?
So I was still doing that. I went to the sixth form, did my A levels, did well in those, and then started the law degree at uni. I didn't want to be a lawyer, but I was just thinking, I knew what I wanted to be.
Probably needed to be a lawyer to be
boxing. Well, and it was not, I wanted to. For me, at that point, it was like, I was down at Crystal Palace. Now it's GB in Sheffield, but back then
that was the hub.
It was just coming in then, because obviously Audley Harrison was a big part of all that happening. And then
so you turned 2002,
2001. So I won the ABAs 2001. 2000 got Young Boxer of the Year. Audley obviously got Boxer of the Year.
Yes.
Senior Boxer of the Year.
Olympic in Sydney. Yeah.
And then, so I missed out. I was too young for Sydney. And then I won the ABAs 2001. And then Rob McCracken called me up one day in the summer and said, what are you doing? What's your plans? He'd retired. He went in with McKenzie. They were in with Panos Eliadis, and they were going to come with this, class of 2002. And at that point, I was just focused on the Athens Olympics, but then your head gets turned, and you hear a few offers, and you start thinking about it, and then then before I knew it, I was boxing professionally, not with McKenzie and Robert, but with Frank Warren.
And I remember Frank at the beginning saying, "This is the sort of English Oscar de la Hoya, and he's the good-looking academic. There's the law thing you could play on, and all of that. Plus, you were really exciting for us at Sky. So, did you feel then that was the right choice, that you were going to ride the waves and hopefully go all the way?
Well, I think for me, at uni, so most people when they go to uni, it's a big thing in their lives, isn't it? They're going to uni, they can't wait, and they're looking forward. I didn't give a shit about going to uni. Do you know what I mean? I was just like doing it because obviously, it was the next thing to do, wasn't it? And I'd done well in my A levels. My parents would have expected that, so I did a law degree just because I didn't have a clue what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I thought it'll keep options open.
Yeah.
But the reality was, you can breeze through the first year, really. Do you know what I mean? It's not that hard. But for me, I wasn't good. The first term was okay. I went to World Juniors, but by the time I was in the ABAs and I was boxing every sort of week or two, and I was down at 67 kilos, like there were days where I'd have to go in for 1 hour lecture, and I just wouldn't go because I thought, what's the point? I'd have to get the bus, get a train, walk a mile or two to sit down for an hour, to be absolutely starving because I was eating nothing, and then you just miss, and then I remember going to see the tutor and just
it's just so hard to get the balance as a fighter, isn't it?
So hard. I was at that point. I think if the weight thing wasn't an issue, because I'd always walked around at 71 kilos prior to this. Like I've never ever dieted ever until the World Junior Championships. I was 18. Like I know you see some schoolboys and they watch what they're eating. I never did that. Pat Benson, who was my coach, he used to just weigh me in what I'd be at the start of the champion. I'd just box at whatever it was, and I was usually a couple of kilos under. Do you know what I mean? Like I'd have breakfast on the day. Like I would never skipped off ever. First time I ever did anything with weight was when I was boxing in this tournament in Hungary in the August. So they had a heat wave over there, and I boxed 3 times in 3 days. And in the final, I weighed in like 69.3 kilo or something. And I remember the coaches saying to me, "John, you could make 67. Imagine how good you'd be at 67." Which is mental, really, when I look back now, because I was the one winning the gold medals on the team. So maybe they should have thought, well, actually, you're doing it right. But anyway, I got down to the 67 kilo for the World Juniors. Won my first fight, got beaten in the second. Bad decision, but, didn't box great either. Then there was the ABAs. I won them at 67, but I was miserable for 4 months. All I was thinking about was food. Probably weighed myself 8 times a day. You know what I mean?
It's no fun, is it?
Dreaming about food.
Yeah.
And then I had that. And after the ABAs, then I boxed in the Acropolis Cup, won a silver medal there. Lost a very close fight to the number 1 in the world at the time, the Russian. And then Robert approached me, and then 6 months later, I'm boxing on Sky with Frank Warren. All just happened so fast.
It was, and it was a great time, wasn't it, for boxing then? Plenty of idols to look up to, and plenty of big shows to get on. It was good, wasn't it?
It was very different to now. I've renewed my manager's license this year, and I've signed a few kids, and it's like, now it's all about, I think because the market in terms of what boxers are earning has just exploded so much that to be able to pay the fighters the money that they're contracted to get, these shows have to be events. They have to be, it has to be a certain size venue. If it's a pay-per-view, it's got to be on certain nights, or if it's not a pay-per-view, then the television companies expect X amount of viewers, so they're trying to come off the back of a certain football match. So a lot of things have to come together, a lot of organising, a lot of negotiation. So there's fewer and fewer dates, plus the budget's the budget, but it's getting squeezed. The budget's meant to be over 25 fights, then it's over 20 fights, then it's over 15 fights. This year, Sky, I think we've done 6 or 7. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, it's getting fewer and fewer. So, just if you've got a good prospects who are big name prospects expect big contracts when they turn professional, but then if they bang someone out in a round, they can't just go, we'll stick you on in 2 weeks. I remember myself, David Barnes, these people coming through, like we were good prospects at the time and earning, good money at the time. As in, certainly the promoter was investing in us. The show was going ahead whether we were running it or not.
Yes.
But he'd slip us on, and he's paying us. He's got to pay the opponent. There's the expenses. So it's a cost to him, but he's investing in you for the future.
And you were fighting regularly.
And we're fighting regularly. But that can't happen now because these blue chip prospects are earning so much that a promoter can't just stick them on again in a few weeks because, that's a chunk of the show.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean, the revenue. So it's a different place now. But
And when you were there, you had a promoter in Frank Warren who was an expert at matching fighters and carving the way up for you. Although you did have a bump in the road early doors with that defeat to Andrew Facey, that sort of strange one, wasn't it, with the class of and all these young prospects. And I guess it was probably a good thing that happened to you very early, that you had to sort of come back from something, a little bit of adversity, maybe?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think from a promotional point of view, the best thing you've got, one of the best things you've got going for you at the start is the zero, the north.
Yes.
Because there's no ceiling to people's imagination.
But is there too much pressure on that? We know our own Johnny Nelson losing his first 3 fights, and it didn't hold him back. I mean, ultimately, he ended up with an amazing record.
Look, being undefeated doesn't make you a better fighter. Years ago, like way back in the 30s and 40s, matchmakers used to say about people who are undefeated that, show me a kid who's undefeated and I'll show you a kid who can't fight because he's been protected.
Yeah.
I think you learn more from a loss than 10 wins put together, but from a marketing point of view, from a hype point of view, having the O next to you, it's a plus.
Yes.
Because the casual, it's there's no limit to how good you might be. There's no ceiling where if you've lost, they go, yeah, and they're raving like, yeah, he's good. Yeah, but we got beat by such and such a one. So it's harder to create the hype. Not impossible, because you can always come again and you rebuild and you can go again. But it's definitely harder. I rebuilt after that loss to Facey and got myself into a position where, going into the fight when I was mandatory challenger against Jamie Moore, it was 50-50, even that maybe more people fancied me because of the hype. I'd built up the hype again.
I mean, that was one of the great fights we've had over the last 20, 30 years domestically. The British title does seem to bring out the best in you guys, in our fighters. And that one was just, despite you losing, and of course you had those memories to deal with in the days and weeks following, but as a spectacle, wow. Extraordinary, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was like a Gatti Ward, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And I always wanted to be involved in those fights. I wanted to win
the rocket. But yeah,
I wanted to be on the other side of it. But to be a part of it.
Well, it was one of those, as a sort of impartial commentator, you were sort of gutted that there had to be a loser because you were both great guys. You were both different styles, fantastic fighters. The stories, Ricky Hatton, I remember sort of sitting in the middle, and he was in your stable, but he was mates with Jamie. I mean, the whole thing just had a great tale to it, didn't it?
It did. Like I say, there was a rivalry there. It was complex because there were lots of mutual people that were friends with both guys. So there was no needle or bad blood. It was respect and even fondness for each other. But when the bell went, you think we couldn't snap. You think we hated each other, And that's why I say sometimes.
You came out absolutely flying, like a man possessed.
I was like an Arctic lorry that went off a cliff with no brakes. I started in 5th gear. And just couldn't ease it off then, because I'd done 10 rounds in the change rooms. I had steam coming off me. I was that fired up. I was far too fired up. I was a bit. Remember when Gascoigne done his cruise shirt in the FA Cup final?
Yes.
I remember reading and people talking about how he was so fired up coming out the change rooms that he needed calming down. He was too fired up. That's how I was against Jamie Moore. I'd come out and I was just prepared to go.
And he was a little bit calmer, a little bit cuter,
experienced, been there before. You know what I mean? He'd been in fights. He'd punched himself out against Scott Dixon. He'd been in a fight of the year with Michael Jones.
Mm-hmm.
His experience. He knew when to rest. He knew when to just ride the shots. Where I was fifth gear all the way.
Absolute belter. But the great, I guess, aftermath was that you ended up working together as fighter and trainer and becoming great mates, which is just so wonderful that boxing can do that. You share blood and I guess you go to a level in there where you get to know each other's souls almost. And then look at the aftermath was phenomenal.
Yeah, no, it was. Well, Jamie's, I think for anyone that knows him, he's just one of life's good guys. You know, he's a great person and a great fighter. You know, great fighter, tough as nails, game as you like, but good fighter as well. Smart, intelligent, you know, good variety. Top fighter. And then, like I say, an even
should have been a world champion, shouldn't he?
I think he should have, yeah. There's been many world champions, many fighters that have won world titles that I wouldn't say were as good as Jamie.
And you became mates, and he helped you down the line. But before all that, you had your own world title tilts. I mean, Felix Sturm was the night, wasn't it, that you didn't get the decision but should have?
Yeah, definitely. I remember standing up at the start of the 12th round and just thinking to myself, just got to stay on my feet here. I thought at that time, I thought I'd pissed it. That's how I felt in the fight. It's obviously I'm glad when every year that fight comes up and everyone goes, oh, what a robbery, and I'm glad that they say that because it was, but it makes me sad that that kind of overshadows what a great fight it was, because everyone knows the Moore fight, but the Sturm fight wasn't as dramatic as the Moore fight. But it was a hell of a fight.
Really good fight.
A hell of a fight, of which Felix Sturm absolutely played his part. Absolutely he did. But everyone just talks about what a bad decision it was, as opposed to what a great fight it was.
How much did that hurt you? And did it sort of, I don't know, did it let you sleep peacefully at night? Or you used to talk about the rage, almost the fire that you came out against Jamie Moore. And you're a winner, Matt. I mean, that must have got you.
Yeah, I was, angry when I heard, when the decision read out, and but then you get back to the dressing room. Brian Peters, my manager, everyone was consoling me, saying you got robbed, and they're kind of jumping on the anger with you, and then he was just calming it down. And then I remember,
good guy, Brian, isn't he?
Great guy. And then there was a guy, Felix Sturm's. He sort of ran Sturm Promotion. A guy called I can't think of his surname, but it was Carsten something. He used to work for UFA Sports, and I remember saying to, because we dealt with him, and I said, Carsten, I won that fight. And he said, I won't argue with that. I'm not arguing with that. You know what I mean?
And that's when you knew.
And then when we come into the press conference, which was massive because Sturm was mainstream, this fight was on billboards.
He was huge, wasn't he? 20,000 people, Lanxess Arena sold out. He was a big name in Germany. And so we come in, and everyone's firing everyone's talk, all the press are there, and Brian Peters just says, look, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to read out a few tweets. And, he read out Andre Ward, Carl Froch, Dan Rayfield, Lennox Lewis, a few people like this, the world of boxing, Eddie Hearn. And it was all like, this is disgrace, worst decision we've seen, Macklin. And, hearing that made me feel better. Because I remember thinking to myself, well, I remember losing like on a Monday night in the arsehole of Wolverhampton somewhere on a dinner show, boxing for Small Heath, and I thought I won the fight, and I didn't. And I've got to go into school the next day and say, how did you win? And I've gone, no, I got robbed. And they're going to think, again. But, you know what I mean? But at least people seen it. People seen it in there, and it was pretty much universally regarded. Like I remember he read out as well that Axel Schultz, is it Axel Schultz? Axel Schultz, yeah.
He had me winning by 4. I think Dan Rayfield had it, and Lennox Lewis, they had it 117, 111 to me. Who else was there? All this was going on. 88% of German viewers voting online, 88% had me winning. So it was like,
yes.
You know what I mean? It was pretty
universal.
It was universal. And then actually, by the time we left there, you calmed down a bit as well now. And then we literally pulled up, and they were really good, the Sturm's outfit, like this, German, super professional, everything was. And we had these, cars taking us everywhere. And the cars took us, dropped us up to the hotel. And the hotel, I think there was about 500, give or take, that came over from Birmingham, Ireland, wherever. And everyone was in this hotel. We got everyone in this hotel. And as I pulled up outside, literally everyone was outside the hotel. And I remember, I think, who was it for Sky now? John Rawlins, Jim, what were there? And literally everyone was cheering like I'd won.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It felt I remember thinking, do you know what? Just fucking enjoy it.
Yeah.
You've trained your ass off for 10 weeks. You've put your performance in. You're not in control of what happened with the results. Just get in there and enjoy it. And you know what? I had a great night then. I did. I didn't even. You know, it wouldn't. It's not as good as what it would have been if I'd have heard the words and knew.
Sure.
But we still enjoyed it.
Must get Brian Peters on the voice of boxing, the Peter Pan of boxing. What a fascinating Benjamin Button, fascinating guy he is. Matt, best fighter you've been in with? I guess you're going to say Golovkin, but Sergio Martinez as well. I mean, you were in with two of the best of the time, weren't you?
Well, at the time, Sergio Martinez, when I fought him, was considered just behind Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather as pound for pound best fighter in the world. I think at the time he was HBO Fighter of the Year. I think he'd had knockout of the year against Paul Williams. He was flying high. You know what? So that fight was on St. Patrick's Day at Madison Square Garden.
Yes.
I remember Brian Peters coming over with a guy called Martin Donnelly who sponsored me in boxing, and some of my old friends from Tipperary hurling days as a bit of a promotional thing. Got some pictures. They come and watched me, and they, that would have been in all the papers back in Ireland. And I remember we sparred on the Tuesday, and I think I did 5 rounds with Austin Trout and 4 rounds with Sekou Powell.
Yeah.
And I sparred well.
And both excellent fighters, those two.
I'd had my first couple of weeks sparring. I was losing weight, I was getting fit, and I wasn't coming off great. But this day I sparred well. I think we did 9 rounds. I think it was 5 and 4, and I remember feeling pretty good, like it's coming. And so we're 3 weeks out, which is getting nice. This is where I want to be, and. I remember that night feeling my rib was a bit sore, so I thought, I might be okay. I'll see how I am in the morning. Anyway, in the morning, I remember trying to get up, and I was like, oh no, like I've done something to my ribs, like all this. So went for an X-ray that night. They said you bruised your ribs. They're not broken, but they're bruised. And I was like, well, I can't risk sparring now. You know what I mean? And I'm like, well, I can't pull out of the fight. You know what I mean? It's like if I don't take this fight, he's gonna move on. This is geared around me, St. Patrick's Day, Madison Square Garden. So that was on the Tuesday, so we didn't spar on the Thursday. So on the Saturday, I thought, I'm not going to spar. I made the decision, I'm not going to spar now. So we did 12 rounds on this body belt thing that Buddy put on, which he hadn't put on before. And I remember really digging all these body shots in. And anyway, when I took my gloves off, my knuckles were literally split open, the 3 knuckles there, to the extent that, I don't mean like just took the skin off. I mean, there were contusions, they were dug in, and you think to yourself, why did you keep punching? But it was like your adrenaline's going, you're
the
banging. The
life of a fighter.
I mean? And I remember, so the 2 weeks before that fight, I was just shadow boxing and running. I was fit, physically I was fit. Like I said, I'd sparred at 9 rounds.
But it wasn't perfect preparation.
But, 2 weeks out, 3 weeks out, no sparring, and from 2 weeks out, no punching at all. You're going into a fight against someone like Sergio Martinez. Those last few weeks, you want that on the pads, feeling sharp, feeling accurate, bang, thinking I'm peaking. Where the 2 weeks out, I'm like, texting Calzaghe, asking him how long out from, who was the guy he beat before, where everyone realised how good he was?
Jeff Lacey.
I I knew through conversation with different people that he nearly pulled out of the fight because his hands were sore and he didn't punch for a couple of weeks. So I remember texting Joe because I was trying to source some confidence from somewhere because,
in that situation,
my belief was starting to come. It was getting there and, your peak. Like, for the Sturm fight, I was an underdog. But by the time I got to the fight, I wouldn't have cared if I was fighting King Kong. I felt invincible. Whether or not you are, that's how I felt. Mm-hmm. And that's how you want to feel. Where with Martinez, I was getting there. Then this happened. The rib happened. Then the knuckles happened. Then it's like, now I'm thinking, can I put the fight back? No, you won't get it again. They're moving on. Paddy's that, still this is kind of going on. And then, I'm shadowboxing. I'm still feeling quite, I'm just trying to convince myself now it's going to be okay. And then, like I say, trying to source confidence from Calzaghe. And I thought, no, you'll be all right. I was even thinking back to days in the amateurs where things hadn't gone perfect, but actually I ended up boxing really well. You're just trying to pull that confidence from somewhere. And I remember thinking, you're an on-the-night fighter anyway. You know what I mean? Which I was. I remember having days in the gym where I was shocking. Do you know what I mean? But on the night, under the pressure,
you performed.
When I was in the best people, that's when I performed. And I did perform against Martinez. Mm-hmm, it was like after 10 rounds.
It's a good fight.
After 10 rounds, I remember I was three up on one of the cards, and I was a round down on the other two. I think HBO had me a round down. It was a close fight.
It was a tough fight.
And, he hit me with some big shots early. I, caught him with some good shots. I think Martinez got me wrong because Buddy's wife is Puerto Rican, so she's fluent in Spanish. Obviously, that's her first language. And he told me afterwards that, I can't remember what round it was, but he comes back to the corner and they were saying to him, Sergio, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? And he said, I can't work him out. I think he was expecting the come forward version of me that fought for Felix Sturm, which was, I think I threw over 1,000 punches, and big shots and high energy and all the rest, where to stand back, box, feint, he couldn't. He broke his rhythm.
Yes,
he couldn't find no rhythm with that.
And he was a rhythm fighter, wasn't he?
And a counterpuncher.
Yeah.
But I was counterpunching him.
Yeah.
And it threw him. So, but I just think like that. Those few weeks, those 2 weeks of sparring, which you're talking 6 sessions, and those 2 weeks of the pads, and it was that 10% that would have got me over the line on that night, I believe. Now, something similar happened with Golovkin. With the knuckles, and we tried to put the fight. We did try and put the fight back there because it wasn't Madison Square Garden, it wasn't St Patrick's Day, and no one wanted to fight him anyway. No, that was the truth. No one wanted to fight him. So that fight came about because I remember being on Twitter, and he had this publicist at the time. I can't even think of his name now, but they were literally sticking it on people, and people were just blanking it. All the contenders in the middleweight division, and I remember thinking, I ain't fucking having him calling me out and me just not putting my head in the sand. So I just went on the attack. I said, I'll fight him in June because, and me and Andy, HBO, Lou DiBella had a date for me and Andy Lee. I think it was May 11th.
Well, it was the Andy Lee, Darren Barker, you, Martin Murray. It was like, why didn't you all fight each other?
But at this time, I was with Lou and so was Andy. So the fight could have got made.
So there was a possibility.
But Andy was coming off. Andy had left. Andy had one fight with, I think, Adam Booth. It wasn't a great performance against Anto Fitzgerald, and I don't think he wanted to go in. Well, he didn't want to go into the fight with me off the back of that performance, and so that fight fell away. So the May date went because it was that, and I think that was it. I think it was, if they didn't find the lead, that date went by the wayside. So I knew HBO had a June 1st date penciled in for Golovkin, and he'd fought earlier I think he'd fought Rosado in the February, then he'd boxed in Monaco in the March, and I said, I'll box him. I'll box Golovkin
in the summer.
September. No, but I said, put us both on a double header June 1st, and we'll box then in the September, October. And then I think once they realised there was a willingness for me to fight him, they just locked on and said, no, we want to do you and him in June. And, the offer was a career best payday and all the rest of it. So
was he the best you fought?
He was the best, yeah. He definitely was. Now, Martinez was awkward and very good at that time. A totally different fight. But I think Golovkin was the best. I think, I wish a better version of myself could have fought Golovkin. Like I say, when the injury happens, and then we tried to put the fight back, and they said that couldn't happen. And then Brian was on a call with HBO and Lou and all these people. And after the call, I said to him, "What do you reckon? What should I do?" And he said to me, why did he put it? He said, "We'll put it this way." He said, "From a career point of view, I think you're better off going ahead with the fight and losing than not going ahead with the fight." So, that that was hard because really then I'm taking the fight knowing that first of all, I'm an underdog. First of all, I'm boxing a guy.
Did you think you'd win on the ring walk?
Oh, not on the ring walk. Really, honestly, you're trying. I'm hoping for the best. You know what I mean? I'm not. Did I believe I could to the absolute core? No, because I knew when I agreed the fight, I absolutely believed I could win the fight. I knew it'd be a hard fight. I knew I'd have to go to hell and back, but I believed I could win it. I believed that I was just going to jump on him, Hagler Hearns, take him into a dog fight. You know, that's the skills and the technique out the window. Just make it so hectic, unsustainable pace. I'm either going to win by knockout or I'm going to get knocked out. That was my mentality. And I remember my brother saying, yeah, you know, he was getting all excited when I was getting hyped up saying it. And I'm rolling the dice. Like, I absolutely knew there was at least as good a chance I was going to get knocked out. But a dogfight's a dogfight. I'd been in dogfights. He hadn't. Didn't mean he couldn't have them, but he'd never been there. And he wouldn't be expecting me to come out and do that. And I was going to play the happy to be here type thing and boost him up all week and all the rest of it. But then when the knuckles went again, it was like I knew from the Martinez fight that he's not going to be okay in a week. Like I gave it 10 days, maybe even 11 or 12, I think it was. And then we sparred, and I bandaged them up and padded them up best I could. But when we sparred, the scabs broke off and came off. And I remember just thinking, I can't go ahead with this fight. And that's when, all the phone calls came on then, and Brian said that.
And this is what people don't understand, really, don't you? They see the fights made and they see the result, but all the stuff in the background, that's 90% of boxing.
Of course. And, it was one of those fights. I know, I remember thinking I remember when I said it in the fight, when I agreed the fight, I even said it to Brian, because Brian was like, yeah, take the fight. He said, are you sure it's a hard fight? We'll wait around. I said, well, no. I said, Brian, I'm 31. I fought for 2 world titles. I've had the date there to fight Andy Lee. He's knocked it back. Now the date's fell by the way. Who am I going to fight? If I'm not going to fight Golovkin, who am I going to fight? It's still going to be someone dangerous, tough fight for not a world title fight and nowhere near the money. I'd rather, go for glory. You know what I mean? Go. Like, you know what I mean? I said, I'm not protecting an undefeated record. I've been beaten. I fought for the world title. I'm just going to jump on him. That was my read. That's what I thought. I said, look, I'm a realist. I said, 9 times out of 10, he probably beats me because he's better than me. I've just got to make this one night that night. I'm just going to make this night that one time. I said, underdogs win fights. Underdogs win football matches. People beat people who are better than them because they're better on the night because they get it right. And that was my mentality. But when the injuries went, all that kind of went out the window then, because then I'm taking a fight that I know I can't be that person for. So I guess, it was opportunity, it was money, it was where do I go if I don't do this? What's the alternative? If they're telling me I'll never be on HBO again if I don't fight on that date, what am I doing? Where's my career going? And I was 31 at this point. I'd been doing it a long time. I'd been, it was, it was, that's the calculate. That's the conclusion I came to.
You went out on a couple of wins at the end. You knew it was done. You'd experienced so much in the sport. Such an exciting fighter. If you haven't watched a lot of Matt's fights, go back and do it. Always entertaining for us as TV broadcasters. Do you think you learnt from having different trainers and all those experiences and the winning and losing that you were going to be a great asset in boxing? To be a manager, to be a commentator, to be heavily involved in the sport after you hung the gloves up, because that's always that moment where you guys have been at it for so long and what is next? And it's that the lights have gone and the adrenaline and the whole sort of hype and everything, and you've got to decide where your life goes. But I guess because you were so wrapped up in the sport, you knew you had a future.
I think all the changing trainers, the changing promoters, When
you were with Frank Warren 3 times?
3 times.
3 different times.
3 different times. 3 innings. But I would not advise that. Ideally, you have one trainer your whole career, one manager your whole career, because they're people that are with you.
How many trainers did you have?
Multiple. I don't even know. Really, I had Billy Graham, Joe Gallagher, and Buddy McGirt, really. And then I had I had one fights with different people, but those were the three sort of ones that probably I had time with, and would have took a lot of what I learned from.
But do you think by taking all these things, the seasoning of you as a professional, the winning, the losing, the not getting that world title victory out in Germany, do you think you've taken that and wrapped it into life as a manager, which you did, and you're saying you're now doing again, and also many, many years of being a top level commentator? That's what we want to hear, don't we, as fans?
Yeah, I've got insight from personal experience. It's not. I haven't read it in a book. I've lived it. I know what worked and what didn't work, and I've reflected on it all with brutally honest self-honesty as well. I know where I effed up and things that I did were right, and all the rest of it. So, I certainly wouldn't recommend doing what I did. But that said, I picked up so much wisdom from that experience.
And you had some fun along the way, didn't you?
And loads of fun along the way. Lots of fun along the way, and lots of lessons. And I did lots of things I did were right as well. It wasn't all it weren't all mistakes. Obviously, I wouldn't have achieved what I did if I didn't. But I know where, if I was what the journey's the journey. But if someone else was at certain crossroads where I was, I might advise them to do different to what I did.
What do you think being a great commentator is all about? Do you think it is that wisdom? You obviously have someone alongside you who's leading it, but you're the one there that's picking the fighters' instinct and their moves. And I know I've spent so much time with you. You live and breathe it. You're not just doing your research. As you said, your research started when you were a kid, probably, for it. And do you think that's what's given you that position for so long in the sport?
I think yeah. I think look, I think to be in the job where you're commentating on boxing or a pundit, to be a good one, you've got to be eating, sleeping, breathing it as much as you were as a fighter. And I think you call it as you see it. You're trying to explain what's happening when you're brought in by yourself or whoever the lead commentator is, and you're also watching where you think this fight is going.
Yeah,
and it can change with one punch, but there's a pattern.
You're trying to sort of score it. You're trying to analyze it.
There's lots of things going on.
It's tough, isn't it? It's a hard gig, actually.
It is. There's lots of things going on. I mean, it is funny. I do, nowadays, years ago, people wouldn't have had to have dealt with trolls on social media, but I did laugh because I've had plenty of it. As you can imagine, we all have. But when I came back from Jeddah after doing Usyk AJ, it was quite funny because I remember looking, on the notifications on Twitter, and let's say there were 30. There was probably a lot more, but let's just say 30 people giving me their opinion of my commentary, and it was like literally 10 people were saying Macklin's you know what, he's up Eddie Hearn and AJ's arse, Matchroom Sky, and then I had 10 people saying Macklin's you know what, he's bitter against AJ because he left Sky.
They're arguing against each other.
And then you've got 10 who were saying, unbelievable commentary, knows his stuff, spot on. So I'm thinking, well, there you go. People hear what they hear. Do you know what I mean?
You got to have tough skin.
So.
But you've been a fighter, so that I guess that comes easy. Greatest fights you've seen? Funniest moments? Anything stand out to you along the way?
Greatest fights, one of them that I was right up close with was, I think it was front row. So yeah, it was front row. Was Gomez Arthur.
Yeah, I
mean there weren't many. There's not. I think there's. And
classic,
it
wasn't
was
it?
Just a cauldron. I mean, I would love to have sat ringside at mine and Jamie's fight.
Yeah,
but obviously I was in it. But Gomez Arthur was straight from the bell. And I knew both guys. And I liked both guys. And it's hard, but it's great as well, And then I wasn't there, but I watched it on television. Corrales Castillo, the first one. I think drama. I think the 10th round is up there with any in boxing history.
Yeah. Agreed with you there. Remember commentating on that. I don't think there's been a greater fight I've seen in modern times. Favorite fighter? Is that a fair question? I guess you're still calling the likes of Fury and Usyk and Dubois and AJ and all these big fights. Somebody that you really admire that you pick out, male or female? Because I know Katie and you are close, and I know that you're a big advocate, like I am, of women's boxing too.
Yeah, well, I love Katie. I've known her a long, long time, and she's just a phenomenal athlete, person as well. When I was young, I remember absolutely murdering the Champions Forever video. Like I remember, like I was that upset, watched it that many times. In the end, it was just fuzzy because like I burnt it out. I did the same with the Fabulous Four video. And at that time, my favourite out of the Fabulous Four was probably Sugar Ray Leonard. But since, over time, I've appreciate probably all four of them for different reasons, I mean, Duran, when you think Roberto Duran was a lightweight and he was, he lost by a round or something to Marvin Hagler. It's just that, and to get knocked out as brutally as he did by Tommy Hearn, and to come back and win title, like he's just. I think when you think of that, and even when he fought Leonard the first time and beat him, I think he was 29 at the time. He'd been a pro many years. He was, I guess, at that time they thought he was on the way out, or getting to the end of his career, and that was what 1980, I think. So. I mean, when you think of that, I think Duran he's just amazed, really.
Okay, my favourite fighter of modern times, I think the best I've ever seen, is Floyd Mayweather, certainly up close in my career, and probably from this side of the pond, Joe Calzaghe or Lennox Lewis. Agree or disagree?
So Mayweather, definitely. So I was in the corner with Ricky when he fought him, and genuinely did believe at the time going in, and you're obviously emotionally swept, and you can't help that to some degree, but did believe that Hatton could beat him, Ricky could, because Ricky was a good fighter. Do you know what I mean? I think
he was a good fighter.
He was a good fighter. I remember watching Ricky Hatton in the top ranked gym, training for the Castillo fight, and he sparred 8 rounds with Alfredo Angulo, who was a light middleweight, who was about 8-0 at the time. So Ricky didn't, outstrong him, and Ricky absolutely boxed his head off.
Yep.
I mean, boxed his head off, and to be honest, it's as good as I've ever seen him. Do you know how smooth he was? In the fight with Castillo, then he kind of jumped on him and just got him out of there. But it was like Ricky could box. Ricky was very good. He won a bronze medal. He beat the Cuban.
He was brilliant
in Cuba in the World Junior Championships. He wasn't just strong. Do you know what I mean? He was clever. He was good. He had quick feet. So he when he fought Mayweather, and Mayweather beat him the way he beat him, I remember thinking that night, wow, I didn't realise he was as good as that. About Mayweather, I knew he was good, but I think after that fight, I thought, wow, I had that so wrong. I realise now why certain people, and I won't say who they are, were like, nah, Mayweather. They didn't give Ricky a chance. And these were people that knew Ricky was good. I was thinking, I know Mayweather's good, but he's not as good as they're saying he is. But actually he was.
Finally, how's life? Couple of young kids now. Keeps you busy, doesn't it? And you're happy, settled, got your commentary gigs. You said your manager's license again. So yeah, it seems like you always look well. Seems like a nice balance you found yourself, because that life after the tough times when you are retired, I guess, and you're looking back, is it's not always rosy. It's not always easy.
No, I think right now in life, I feel like I'm at a nice place with work, life, family. There's balance. Balance is the key word, balance, because I never had balance in my life in anything. It was all or nothing. I'd swing from one extreme to a completely different extreme. And never satisfied, never happy. Suffered terribly from perfectionism. And then, even at the end of my career, I didn't really feel good about it. I didn't feel good. There was a lot of regrets. There was a lot of, things that I could have done better, shouldn't have done this, shouldn't have done that. You know, the way I lived in between fights. But then actually afterwards, and this was after, you know, I did a bit of work on myself, bit of inner work, and did a bit of reflection, and had to go back sometimes to appreciate how far you'd come, and then realised actually it was beyond my wildest dreams. All of it, when you think about it, you know, training with the likes of Freddie Roach and Buddy McGirt, and boxing in Madison Square Garden on St. Patrick's Day, and boxing in Las Vegas and Foxwoods against, you know, all right, I got beat, and it wasn't, you know, the circumstances, the fight and everything, but I lost to probably the best middleweight since Marvin Hagler, pound for pound great of my era, in his prime. So, you know, these were things that I read about other people doing, because I was one of them. Like, I used to get the bus into Birmingham city centre, and the gym wouldn't open till 5:30, and I'd literally be in WH Smith, wouldn't pay for them, but you know, for the hour that I'd be in there, I'd read the boxing news and the boxing monthly and the Ring magazine. I'd go cover to cover. So, you know, to think then that I did all that, and not to be happy about it, I was like, fucking give your head a wobble, son. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you'd have said to me at 14, you're going to go on and have this career, even just in the amateurs, what I did, I'd have bit your arm off, never mind your hand. So, no, I look back now and I think, I can't believe it all happened. It was just a dream that I'm still living today.
Great to see you. Matt Macklin on the Voice of Boxing. Didn't quite become a world champion, should have done. World-class commentator, world-class guy, and fantastic to have you. Pop back again at some point soon. So busy, the boxing world at the moment, and we'll get Brian Peters in as well, because that'll be a fun.
We'll do a three-way.
Do a three-way. That'll be a fun podcast. Voice of Boxing in association with Loungers TV. We will see you very soon.